Well, welcome to this podcast. I am super excited because it's going to be in a format that we haven't done yet, but we are actually looking forward to doing more of, and that is more of like a roundtable discussion. Our long-term vision for this is to have groups of people in a studio with me talking about the hard stuff, talking about the real stuff of entrepreneurship, of life, of parenting, of growing, of health challenges, of faith, and whatever else comes up, because y'all know I have no filter. And that is how God made me. So I'm the one who talks about all the hard stuff that people are wanting to talk about, but everybody's terrified to talk about. Today, I'm really excited. I have several guests with me who are actually a part of my VIP mastermind. So they're used to hanging out with me on Zoom, but they are a wee bit nervous and wondering where the heck Sandy's going to take this discussion. If we were all in my own studio, I'd be pouring them dry farm wines for sure. And we would be having some fun. So welcome to Bethany. Give us a little wave. And we've got Becky and Cielo and Kristen. They all have different experiences, backgrounds in their life and business, even navigating through ministry and then going into business and all kinds of things in between. So, ladies, we're just going to have a discussion. Nobody's watching. Nobody cares. This is just, you're hanging out with me. I've got my tea. I don't know what you have. And let's talk about some fun things about the entrepreneur journey. Even that word is irritating. Have you ever tried to say entrepreneur 10 times real fast? It starts out well, and then it gets really difficult. Entrepreneur. It's kind of like the journey itself is, isn't it? It's like a honeymoon while we're dreaming it up. And then all of a sudden it's like, what did I get into? So my first question, and we're just going to have kind of an open dialogue and let it go wherever it goes. And feel free to interrupt. I want to make sure this is more, relaxed than it is like an interview. What led you into being an entrepreneur? And if you were ever in ministry, what led you to come over into the entrepreneurial marketplace realm? Who wants to open up? How about you, Kirsten?
Well, actually, so I was raised by a father who was in business his whole life. And so for me, he owned Italian restaurants, he owned furniture stores. And I think that it was just put into my DNA, so to speak. And so I knew that I never wanted to be a corporate America person, although I've done corporate America. And so, yeah, that's kind of where it all started for me.
Wow. Ladies, when we are in person, we know Kirsten's going to be bringing the food.
Yes. Sauce and meatballs.
There we go. And Cielo, actually, I think you'll probably be bringing the food as well. And I can't wait for people to hear some of your story. What led you?
So thinking about it now, like growing up in the Philippines, my grandma, my mom's side, actually owned her little food stall in her own house. And I grew up watching her cooking, going to the market, and that led me to love for cooking because I just experienced going to the market, cooking in front of people, talking to fishermen, exchanging food.
Wow.
And then also with my dad, he had a business with the fishing business in the Philippines. And then we moved here in America and built his own dream of business. So it's kind of like, it's in my DNA too. Like it's just never been really kind of triggered, I would say, because there's a lot of, questions. And as a beginner, it's like I'm still soaking all this information and just trying to take it one baby step at a time.
Good stuff. How about you, Becky?
I actually started being an entrepreneur when I was 14 years old. And the reason why I started was I was saving up to go on a mission trip to Africa. So I had to, get money to do this trip. So I started off by making peanut brownies, cookies, and selling them in my church and my school and around my contacts. And so my father, again, who has a big background in starting businesses and having big ideas and all that sort of stuff, he's an entrepreneur that became a pastor. He kind of taught me right from scratch, just by the baking the cookies, how to run it as a business. And so that was my first introduction to running business. And I've been running businesses ever since, all through my life.
That's incredible. And so your dad was an entrepreneur and became a pastor.
Yeah.
Well, we all know, and I've talked about that. Like, quite frankly, if your church goes over just a couple 50 to 100 people, you're going to have to start running it like a company or it's going to get dysfunctional.
laugh about that too, because it's like Dad had all the ideas and that, but all his brothers and sisters made a lot more money than him because he ended up in the ministry. And of course, never really acted out the ideas that he had, although they were $1 million ideas that eventually came around. But, he chose the pastorship first.
And that's in your DNA.
Yes.
Those $1 million ideas. That's an incredible inheritance. And you all have that in your DNA. Isn't that incredible? My father was also an entrepreneur. So he was the one who lit the bug in me when I was 7. How about you, Bethany?
Well, my entrepreneurship comes from my mom's side. Her father had multiple businesses, and she liked to have businesses, but my dad is a pastor also. Mm-hmm. And so she supported him and worked a lot with people through that. Wow. But when I was younger, I wanted to climb that corporate ladder and be able to do all sorts of stuff, and found out that really wasn't for me. And when I was laid off, I started my own business and never stopped.
Wow. See, what's interesting is that you all have that in your DNA, and you've all adamantly said in one way or another in your own way, corporate was not for me. Mm-hmm. Now, see, my only experiences in corporate was trying to tiptoe into that realm and being a copywriter and writing it for corporations. I quickly learned I didn't want to do that anymore. I did a short 3-month contract with a big corporation and was just like, y'all take forever to get anything done. And there's way too many policies, and pull up your own dang diapers, for crying out loud. It's driving me crazy. But you all in one way or another said that wasn't for you. And whoever wants to interject or whatever, what do you think some of the components that in your mind, in your journey, was different in becoming an entrepreneur, whether harder or easier, doesn't matter, both are relevant, versus what you imagined or you had experienced in corporate that definitely wasn't for you?
I'll speak to that to start off with. I worked for the Australian government, the immigration department, so obviously that's very bureaucratic, very corporate. And for my personality, it's like I was constantly bringing new ideas to the table, but the people that were my supervisors, and there was so much red tape and so many checks and balances to go through that I got very frustrated, because although they could see that they were great ideas and that they could really help the department, it was just really difficult to get them actually to roll out, in the department because of all the checks and balances. So I think that's one of the reasons why I love being an entrepreneur, because I'm a quick start and I can have ideas, I can roll with it, see if it works. If it does, yay. If it doesn't, that's fine. We move on to the next idea. But there's not this checks and balances type thing that we have to go through basically before we can even bring it into existence, like there is in the corporate world.
So good. Nobody has to approve your idea. Nobody has to tell you, you have permission to run on it.
Yeah.
Oh, and nobody's picking up the mess you create either, but that is one of the risks. Kristen, how about you?
Well, for me, I had actually spent about 20 years homeschooling my kids. And I don't even think that I realized at the time that maybe a piece of why I did, there were some, other factors, but one of them was I wanted to be my own person and have my own life. But that really didn't get exposed until in 2008, the financial crash. We lost everything. And that's when we started in business. But then I ended up in corporate for only a couple of years. And it was like, no.
And tell me why. Tell me why that no is so adamant for you.
It's too restrictive, and it takes away. I'm giving the best of me to somebody else's dream. And so my brain space, my emotional energy, my creativity, I was giving it to my children as I homeschooled. And I didn't even I wasn't cognizant of that when I was doing it. Wow. And then you spend the day punched in, punched out, punched in, punched out, and for somebody else's vision. So that's why that's so strong for me.
Good stuff. Bethany or Cielo, whichever one wants to go first. Why go ahead. And Cielo, I don't know if you had a lot of corporate expectation as much as cultural, or what do you think? Because I know we've talked a lot about this and you've really broke through. So make sure you take the time and add those details. It will help some women.
Yeah, because I work as a nurse in a hospital and in clinics, and it is clock in, clock out. As much as I love serving others and giving them happiness, I just got burnt out. Just keep giving and giving. As a nurse, that's what you do. You listen to people, their problems, their sicknesses, and my creativity was slowly going away. I keep going in, going out. I feel like I'm losing my creativity in something I like, but not much that I have passionate for. But I love what I do.
Yeah.
So getting away from that and able to, with my husband being in the healthcare field, and he let me be a stay-home mom.
Right.
And that, we made hard choices of like paying off debt and starting, we're unlearning a lot of things that we grew up with that is new for us.
Ooh, that's so good.
So to unlearn a lot of things, I'm still on that phase right now, unlearning a lot of things. And to be instead of a corporate and to be in business, I feel like there's a freedom of creativity. And I feel like if you're happy of you're doing something, you give more happiness toward others. When I was in healthcare, I was not that kind of person. I was burned out.
I'm so grateful to meet you all lit and wide open and growing and learning new things at this season in your life. It's been exciting. You had some cultural expectations as well of what you should probably be doing versus what you wanted to really admit you were wired or born to do. If you want to speak into that, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, because I think what happened is when you have immigrant parents coming from a different country, I mean, I'm not gonna tell my parents are the worst, because I think they're doing the best that they can or what they know.
Sure.
Try to protect me and give me a future where I'll be stable. I think that's the always thing that they say, that we want you to be stable. But as I grow older and become a parent myself, I learned that, there's a way of balancing, or at least helping your children to become who they are without having to put fantasy, I guess you would say, to your kids, and actually show them the proper way of being responsible and achieving your dream at the same time. And that's
So
what I'm
good.
to. It's like I have to learn that so I could teach that to my children. And with my parents coming from the Philippines, they started from nothing to what they have now. And as a child watching that, it makes me proud to watch my parents to be, my mom, English is her second language, and she became a nurse at 30 something years old, 35.
Wow.
And then my dad have a business now, and he've had so much business all over the years, and they never gave up. So for me, that's amazing to see that my immigrant parents are still working for their dreams.
And the persistence, and it actually makes me teary-eyed because the courage and the no quit attitude of an immigrant reestablishing themselves in a new country and learning all different kinds of things and trying to figure out what they want to do with their dreams. And that is something that those of us who were born in the US and this freedom, we can take it for granted when we don't realize that persistence will eventually become a part of your entrepreneurial journey. But it was a part that you saw from the beginning, which is a very rich, rich heritage that I envy you for, because seeing that is a work ethic that few of us are ever exposed to. Yeah. How about you, Bethany?
Well, just like Becky, I have a lot of ideas. I'm also very strong in quick start.
Yeah.
And so I would get bored. I would go to a job, I would learn everything, I would put in ideas, and I'd just be bored, and I'd leave and I'd go to the next one, and I'd leave and I'd go to the next one.
She comes to the top and off she goes.
Yes. So when I went to Hughes, they said, you really need to stay somewhere for a few years. And that just sounded horrible to me. And fortunately, I had positions where I kept changing jobs within Hughes. So I had the same thing. I just my resume now showed I was at Hughes longer. But I was in a lot of ways, I was thrilled that I was laid off because it allowed me then to go do what I really wanted to do. It was like God saying, okay, you won't leave this one, but I'll kick you out the door.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was really good. And I realized I did not want to keep going back hunting for jobs and changing jobs.
And that reveals a real apostolic part of you, because that's very much a trait of those who are in the apostolic realm in their gifting. And it's not always exercised in the church. It can be exercised in a corporation where they innovate and create and fly to the top and I'm bored. Goodbye. Got to go innovate, create, send out people. I'm bored. Goodbye. It's not a spastic, irresponsible, I'm constantly trying to make more money and I'm not satisfied. It's a literal, I've gone as far as I can go and now it's time for me to activate something else. And I hadn't seen that in you before. And so that's amazing just hearing that story.
Thank
now,
you.
all of you, I wrote a couple of notes and it's something I want to ask you this question. So you have something that I did not have when I started my entrepreneurial journey. And that is an experience that led to, if we will, almost a disdain, or maybe it was just a disdain towards corporate, like an intolerance for it. Like there's just no way I'll downsize and struggle before I go there. And I hadn't experienced that. And when you're all at different various places in your business, have you ever considered the fact that in some ways you will become corporate? You will become the entrepreneur who creates the jobs, and someone else will have a job because of your profit sharing, i.e. a paycheck, and they will be serving and need to be vested in your vision. So what things can we say that we learned in corporate that we knew in creating our own, whether you've had employees or not yet, you knew I got to change this? Or like Cielo said so brilliantly, that is a book title waiting to be, written, Unlearning Things of My Life. What things did you need to unlearn? Or you absolutely said, no, this is not how my company's going to be. Whether I have one employee or one contractor, I have 1,000. Anybody?
With me and my dad, I've been a follower of Dave Ramsey. And me and my husband, before we started dated, we've been in a journey of being debt-free. And we are debt-free except our mortgage.
Okay. Yeah.
And my dad likes to borrow money. And that's the kind of thing where I put a boundary, like, that's who you're going to be. And I will respect. And as your daughter, I would not say anything. But for me, unlearning the goal of not borrowing money is like being responsible financially, because in our family, for some reason, a lot of them borrow money, except my mom. My mom has had that traditional value of keeping something for emergency fund. When a rainy day comes, you have something.
Right.
And I think that's one of the things that I had to unlearn, because for some reason in our culture, even in American culture, back then we have the keeping up with the Jonases.
Yes.
And now it's social media. So I had to learn to stick to who I am and what makes me happy instead of trying to compare my life to others.
Wow, you just spoke a whole episode I might need to talk to you about. Keeping up with the Joneses on social media. Wow, that actually was really good. And I have a question, but anybody else?
For me, I recently, before COVID, I was the owner of a franchise, which is one of the largest kids' slumber parties and picnic franchises in the Southern Hemisphere. Wow. And so it became quite corporate, as I had 10 franchisees in New Zealand and Australia. And suddenly I was in this position where I was the big boss and I had all these kind of people depending on me. And I really did struggle in that role. And I think I realized that I'm the kind of entrepreneur that, I love building things. I love that process of running for it, building it, branding it, getting it out there, doing the marketing, doing, just getting it there. But then I'm not good at the everyday dealing with people, all their problems. I wish they'd just get their act together and sort themselves out. That is not my skill.
So good.
But having a lot of shame about that, I've come on this real journey about just recognizing, hey, you know what? This is me and this is who I am as an entrepreneur. And that's okay. And I ended up selling the business to someone who that was her core gifting was in the building the people up and in the, you know, and the motivating them and the getting them working and all that sort of stuff. So it worked out well. But, you know, I think as an entrepreneur, sometimes we carry a lot of shame because we're expected to do a lot of stuff all by ourselves. But there's some giftings that we don't have, and that's okay. You know, and that's when we outsource or we employ someone else to come in and do that part. And that is perfectly fine. So,
and that's the part where we can create our own corporate identity how we want to.
True.
Because I get it. I coach and mentor and consult people all day long. The last thing I want to do is pull up the, you know, the diapers and motivate and be the inspiration for every single person on my team. Although it is a good requirement and a good standard of me, there are other people who do that better. And so getting someone on the team who does do that. So, and a lot of CEOs struggle with this. They literally think they have to do it all. And I had to have someone who's very non-traditional so that my vision could be still brought forth. And this is where, as entrepreneurs, we get to pick that and we get to change our mind and we get to reinvent our culture. So that's really great. Really great. How about you, Bethany?
A lot of it was, I kind of ended up owning a business that I didn't intend to. I saw a need, stepped out, and started fulfilling that need, and ended up with I know.
Apostolic.
But I totally relate to Becky because I ended up with employees. I ended up with basically a publishing. In fact, I have a publishing business, and I don't really use it, but I did that for 17 years. So I had to have several employees and go through all that.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of what we don't like from corporate definitely affects how we run the business. You know, I didn't like that people didn't hear my ideas. So I worked with the employees and let them have their ideas and incorporate it as we could. But it was quite an experience going through being at corporate so long and then but stayed in the business for 17 years when my ideal job would be creating a business very, very similar to Becky. I didn't know we were so alike.
Yeah.
You know, creating a business idea, handing it to get it off the ground, hand it to someone and they run and I exit. That's my ideal business.
Yes.
So being in a business for 17 years and working with employees, I think I learned a lot from corporate to be more flexible and to be able, it was really good for me to learn how to stick with something for such a long time because, and I loved it. So it was a very good experience for me, but definitely incorporated what I hated and loved about corporate.
Well, and it's something because the employee aspect too, I learned through, you know, nothing more than the experience, good, bad, and ugly, is to hire entre employees, which are employees that have an entrepreneurial bent. Because the number one part of our culture is you must be self-governing. That's how I homeschooled my kids. I'm not going to have adults who every little thing they have to be told what the next thing to do is. We've got to work as a team and be self-governing. So all of your experiences are really great feedback for, I'm sure, the people listening. Kirsten, you got anything to add to that?
I think I would just say for me, the one thing that I took away from corporate were the systems. They taught me how to create and implement systems on a much higher, better level. And I loved that so much. I think that the one thing that I would probably, that I would change then in that arena would be, oftentimes corporate does not put the right people in the right positions. And so even when I see, you know, and I watch you, Sandi, run your business, and I can hear you talk about how you're pulling out the magic in somebody and you're putting them in a proper position and you're not afraid to change what you need to change. And then that's also where now you've taught us how to bring in like the Colby score and to understand that this isn't about good or bad. This is about running in your area of excellence. And not to feel bad about it. And I spent a lot of my life feeling badly about like how I process life. And so now I feel like I'm free to do that. And I probably would want to help somebody else be able to do that. If they were then going to work for me, I would want to have somebody in their right position. So
that's so good. And one of the best, if not the best book I've ever read on that was with Jack Welch, and it's Good to Great, because having all the good people on the bus does not take you to greatness. It actually can prohibit you from getting there. And how to navigate, what if you hire family members and they're not the greatest choice, and how to avoid nepotism and favoritism and all the other different dynamics. Or what if you have someone who sold their resume to you? And I've experienced this, and they're great people and they're really good in what they were hired for, but they are stellar over here. And no one ever gave them that opportunity. The dynamic sometimes can even be avoiding the very thing that they were born for, because they had an education on something, or their parents expected it, or it paid more money, and not understanding, but the thing you were born for will come more instinctively natural and will heighten not only your ability to exercise it, to learn about it, and even create new dynamics of it. That didn't come till later on in my career. A lot of the entrepreneurs that I serve and that all of you even have as teammates in the VIP, and even, the over 2,000 members we have in the inner circle, are people that I will call solopreneurs. So this is not necessarily someone running a corporation as I am, and you don't have to. That's the whole delusion about the gospel of hustle, and you have to get bigger and everything's got to be bigger, as if bigger is best. No, what was your dream? Some people, $5,000 a month, it will change the dynamic in the history of their family. They don't have to make $100,000 a month. They don't need to go to multiple millions. And it can be an author or a writer. I was a copywriter who had no employees and had a firm with $500,000 in retainers, but I was the solopreneur. I was the copywriter. I think one of the things that all of you brought up were such great things. One of the things that I want to talk about, though, is Cielo. And she's talking about, especially as a Dave Ramsey student. And I love Dave and had an opportunity to go in his office and work with his team even, and implement some of the things we do in our company, like SOPs, system of process, so that everybody in their seat knows what our processes are. But that is the aspect of borrowing money. And I'm sure I'm going to trigger you, and I'm going to trigger some of my audience. But something that I've learned, the bigger that I've gone, and even gone into 8-figure businesses and even more, is the dynamic of whether we borrow money for pleasures in life, enhancements of our life, vacations and spending sprees, and I want a better desk and all this kind of stuff, or we are utilizing money as a tool to grow our business. And that is whether or not that money that is borrowed is actually going to expand and it's going to generate more income. A new desk won't generate new income. New office furniture will not generate a new income, whether people want to argue with it. No, it won't. But and what's something is I heard someone say recently, and I thought that's so true. You can tell that dynamic a lot of times as if someone actually borrowed over $100,000. An investment into the company that's over $100,000 actually becomes something that's going to make more money. A lot of people can actually utilize that $100,000 to make $100,000 to make millions of dollars utilized properly. Other people will simply take it upon themselves as debt. And that has to do with how they used it. Any thoughts on that, or any insight, or did that trigger you or anybody?
I think so. When you talk about that, it's so funny because I see my dad talks about it too, because I respect his, when he borrowed the money for his dream for the restaurant, um, he used it as the way he would do it, to utilize it to bring more profits and to employ other people. And he's also still on a stage where he's learning to have employees, because he was an employee still himself. He still has a work as in a ski resort while running a restaurant. And he talked about how, sometimes you borrow money for the profits, and there's a way of paying it off with your profits.
Right.
So I think that's where I'm learning about the differences of the good and the bad of borrowing money and also being free. So it's such a gray area for me, I feel like.
It's a really great area, because we also in America live in a nation. Now, Becky's not in America, but I'm sure she can relate with this, where credit card debt is the consumption of people's dreams. It will destroy you. It will consume your dream and kill it. But interestingly enough, not only borrowing the money to expand the business, but knowing what to do with it. And I think this is where entrepreneurs sometimes fall. I don't know if any of you have experienced this or want to speak into this, where they actually had the opportunity to borrow $100,000 or $250,000 to grow the business, but then they found out that only 50% of it was actually used because of lack of experience, lack of knowledge to actually expand the business. And now they have that learning in the background, which all of us have. Mistakes are learning pools. They're not failures. We have to look at it that way. And sometimes the painful process of coming out of it can be difficult, but they're learning tools and pools. Now they know you don't invest your money into that. It's like the risk allowance. Does that make sense? Anybody else?
I think it's easy to fall in the trap of, you need money to grow a business or have a business. And a lot of times that's not necessarily true. People go and think, oh, if I have, $50,000 to go to the business, we're going to grow.
Right.
And I think that learning and value of understanding, like you said, what will make you money, and then be able to go through it. But it's so hard for new entrepreneurs to understand that.
Yes.
And you do a great job of training us what to look at for.
I have enough mistakes. I have more mistakes.
That's why we look for mentors, though.
Yes. To glean from someone else's mistakes. And I think the other thing is you said it. And I think the delusion of the whole startup community, I experienced that quite a bit when I was in Kansas City for a little while, where millions of dollars are given up for startups. And it's almost like epitomized, like it's the sign of heroism, how fast you burn through it. And how you can say, I've got $20 million for my startup, and the startup was closed. Why? The majority of the startups closed because the $20 million wasn't utilized appropriately. Or it just the idea didn't work. That's the nature of business. A lot of businesses don't work. Actually, the statistics show that more than 90% don't succeed. I personally have a conviction that has to do with lack of knowledge more than lack of money. I will actually go to my grave saying that statement. You don't lack money. You lack knowledge, because you would use that knowledge. That's what happened to me, is using that knowledge appropriately. Understanding when something needs to sit there in a debt that's being managed for cash flow. Understanding what is the greater risk, which one actually has a history of being able to churn profits and grow. And that's why a community like this is so valuable.
Yes.
Now, one of the things we said as well was that unlearning a lot of things. We're in an interesting time here in this pandemic, and we've got PPP loans, and we've got loans from the small business department and all this kind of stuff. And it's important to understand as entrepreneurs, not only do the laws that exist, I did a podcast on that before, are different, but what are the things you're unlearning, whether it's from a family, your past experience, or even societal expectations, or that which is viewed as normal? You later discovered that ain't going to serve my business very well. Anybody?
Well, I think when they talk about success, a lot of people do it differently in social media. Like you talked about this a lot in our inner circle. Like when even doing your videos, you don't have to have all the fancy things. Just be you and have the content. You know what I mean? And just work with what you have. And a lot of the unlearning things I have to get is that sometimes for other people you might not be cool, but for you, you're cool. So what does it matter what other thinks about you when you like yourself? And I had to unlearn a lot of things like that because I like to please others, which with being in the inner circle, I learned to be more, to find my voice and to accept who I am. And, you know, being in the American and Filipino culture, I'm always in between. I could never really fit in on Filipino culture because I'm too very open-minded when it comes to traditions. And then in American culture, I'm still kind of like barely assimilating because there's some slangs that I don't understand. And I'm like,
right, yeah.
So it's a lot of learning for me that I have to understand and to also, what do you call that? To understand other people, how they relate to things.
That's so good. I just want to interject. Yeah, one of the things I'm really passionate about is talking about how I made my first million with 2 book files that were from the Goodwill and a piece of wood on the top. It was a door that was my desk to $1 million. And that said desk was in the corner of a dining room. And a basic budget can make you absolutely wealthy. And the appearance of wealth definitely does not guarantee it. And you can have a basic budget and create incredible things. One of my things that I strive for is why we want to be professional and all that. I want people to see you can do it. You can do it from home. You can do it with just your phone. You can do it with a $70 light and your phone from Amazon. Get the light, and you can do it with a $20 USB microphone. You can do it with a very simple website. My websites looked absurd, and I made $1 million. Anybody else? As far as what you would say you had to unlearn, or you had to like counterculture yourself with what was expected?
Again, similar to what you're saying, you know, I'm a web developer. Like I started as a web developer and a designer. And so for me, the tendency to make things look pretty sometimes overruled and what I'm learning from you and in the inner circle is the importance of the audience and reading their mind. And it's actually not about how it looks. It's about how you are reaching your audience and the right audience for you and for your product that's going to really resonate with you. So I'm having to unlearn my designer part of me that just wants everything to be pretty, because pretty is how I'm going to make money. It's not how you make money. How you make money is by having that relationship with your audience. So I'm unlearning that.
You know, it's so fun is I want to connect you with Jennifer Allwood, Becky, because she's not only one of my favorite longtime clients, she's now a colleague and one of my best friends. And she has that pretty gene. And so she actually created a business where she created things and made them pretty. And she actually got paid to make things pretty in faux painting. And now she actually mentors and has a multi-million-dollar business mentoring entrepreneurs who create things that make things pretty.
Okay.
How rad is that? Where she took that thing and still was able to do the marketing and whatever. But at the end of the day, you can just look at it on her Instagram feed. Pretty is in her, it's hardwired. It's in her DNA. If it's not sparkly and leopardy, it's not pretty yet. I adore her. Anybody else?
How I found you through Jennifer Allwood.
Yeah. So fun. And you know, she was at that quandary too, but I love making things pretty, but I really don't want to do this forever anymore. And then that's when she started mentoring other people after years and years and years of doing it herself. Yeah. With creative entrepreneurs and stay-at-home moms. And it's amazing. Anyone else want to share what you had to unlearn?
I think that for myself, a couple of different things that came out of the shutdown were, my mom was in assisted living, and so that wasn't going well. So we took her out, and she's 91. And so I realized that system wasn't working. And then having homeschooled for 20 years and seeing the moms begin to distance learn do distance learning with their children, and a lot of parents choosing to homeschool and whatever, recognizing that there are a lot of people saying the system, whether it's, a hybrid right now or whatever it is, it's not working for me. And I think that what that did then in turn for business, that process is, before the pandemic hit, there were a lot of voices out there in social media that told you, going back to, branding yourself a certain way and, the colors and the prettiness and all of these different pieces. And it gave me I don't know if it's an insight or a courage to go, oh my gosh, all of the systems that we thought were supposed to be a certain way and they're not. It gave me the freedom to just go, stop.
Yeah.
I just want to know how to do this. And then connecting that with like your voice of just exactly what you said. Why don't we start at the very beginning? And, you can start with your phone and you can start with a ring light or whatever it is. And I realized that all of those systems, a lot of it was noise. And I just kind of let that all fall to the wayside. And that's kind of how that shifted for me.
That's so good and very prevalent in the coaching, fitness, and beauty realms. I don't know many other industries that it's so obvious because everything was so pretty and so high gloss, and now it's in their apartment. And many of them, their businesses are skyrocketing because in the struggle, we met their authentic self. And many of them were like, forget that. I'm homeschooling my kids and running this thing from home. And you're going to see me in my sweats one day and all dialed up the next. And it really created a deeper level of even connection for some people. Some people can't make the shift. But I love how you said it. I think the provoking thing is for the people listening is, what do you want to unlearn, or what do you want to just say, because that's not authentic to me. That doesn't serve me well. This is what I'm going to do. How about you, Bethany?
For me, I'm more a plain Jane kind of person. I don't like getting all dressed up. And it's really been a struggle for me with, for my mom, her weight was always a big deal. So it's always been a big deal that, if you're not thin, then, definitely don't go on camera. If, don't do it, be sure to make sure you look perfect and can do everything before you even start with video. And that's something I'm still unlearning because I have a very hard time with it.
That's so good. And in our body awareness culture, I think it's so important that I'm going to quote something from Alison Armstrong, who's just one of my favorites in understanding men and helping with dating and marriage and all that. And she said, she teaches, do you know the two most attractive things that drive every kind of male to a woman? Like the two things that whether he's an alpha male, a beta male, young, older, rich, broke, whatever, these two things drive the DNA of a man to a woman. And we're all on our seats like, is it big boobs? Is it a bigger butt? Is it a snatched waist? Is it the eyes? Is it the way she talks? Is it her gorgeous hair? No, it's confidence and authenticity.
Yeah.
Like they don't even see your cellulite when you're confident. They could care less about your wrinkles when you're authentic. Your hat is hot, whatever size you are, when you're just being yourself. Wow. And you know what's something, isn't it crazy, Bethany, that some of the most viral videos are not the most polished? Crazy in a good way.
Right.
Yeah. And sometimes the more polished and perfect, we can't relate.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of Good Morning America, and all the different people are broadcasting from Zoom from their kitchen.
Yeah.
And if you're like me, I'm like, ooh, you're an amazing person. I've been listening to you all the time. I want to see your kitchen. Let me see your kitchen. Oh my gosh, I think I like you more now. Or I don't like you because of the way your kitchen is, or whatever. It's interesting what happens in that whole dynamic.
And right now, not only that, but you're seeing kids suddenly pop up, or, people walking through the screen that's unexpected. And we all laugh.
Dog tails and cats. And
yeah, it makes it fun.
Yes. It makes it more real, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of freedom in that.
There's a lot of freedom in that, Kirsten, and you're really so masterful in speaking into that on your platforms and just who you are. I heard somebody say New York will never be the same. And there's a lot of people in New York who said, thank God.
Mm-hmm.
And what's ironic is people who are leaving New York for a new beginning, because I do not like this new normal. Like, what the heck is normal? It's a freaking setting on a dryer. That's it. Patsy, I can't remember her last name. She wrote that in a book many, many years ago. But there are people leaving New York, the city that never sleeps, the city that goes faster than most any other city, the city that drives media, the city that's all about image and all that kind of stuff. And you have people vacating to go buy 3 acres.
Mm-hmm.
And not just for the pandemic, for the rest of their life. Mm. It's almost as if it gave people courage to say, you know what? I never wanted it anyway. And to me, that's like a new beginning, not a new normal. Mm-hmm. We're seeing that authentic. Let me see. I think one of the questions I really wanted to ask you is, as business women, and I don't know whether or not, just because of the nature of our relationship, whether you're moms or not, whether you're married or not, but just the dynamic of being a businesswoman. And we tend to attract who we are, which is encouragement. I want to say to you, Bethany, remember that. And I love that I attract all the diversity, because I'm just as comfortable with no makeup on as I am with eyelashes on. I'm both. But what's interesting is the dynamic of being a woman in business and literally having to work in a society that is very feministically driven, in a world that emasculates men as if it is normal and it is the way for the woman to climb to the top. And those of us who have courage and power, and some of us are warrior women, but we also hold very much to the truth of femininity. We do not believe we have to crush a man to get to the top. We do not believe that there are certain places that, I'm sorry, I don't want to be equal because God didn't wire me as that. I will never bench press what my man does. I do not have the capacity to handle certain stresses because that's not what I was wired for. He was wired to protect. And even whether you have same-sex type relationships and marriages and all different kinds of things like that, you will still have a masculine and a feminine type entity. And as business women, how are you navigating that? Do you feel it's a challenge? Do you feel that sometimes how are you navigating that? Anything goes on Sandi's podcast.
Having come from I would say a fundamental Christian background as a child, my family would constantly, as I went into motherhood, I got married, became a mother. It was actually looked down on that I shouldn't have my own business because my parents would always tell me, your number one priority is to be a mother and to stay at home with the kids and to not have any other distractions but the kids. Yes. And it took me a while to actually come to terms with the fact that, well, my personality, I'm a happier mama when I'm working on something, A
lot of women are.
Other than the kids, I mean, like when I'm that's what fills me up, and that's what helps me to be a better mother to my kids when they've stubbed their toe or coming to me in tears or whatever, because I'm being filled up by something that speaks to who I am and my personality and my instinct, and that means I'm then filled up enough out of my overflow to be a great mother to my children. Yes. So it took me a long time to kind of come to terms with the fact that I was a bad mum because I was and I was a single mum too, which made it even difficult. So I didn't have the support of a husband to help me in my businesses and to support us financially. So it was a bit of a risk, me going into business as a single mum all on my own, where the buck stopped with me. And if I don't get, money in, we don't eat type of thing. But, coming to that point where I recognize that actually it's okay for me to be a mum and to run my own businesses and do my own projects aside from being a mum without feeling the guilt or the shame that I'm taking away time from them. It took me a long time. And I think a lot of that was from that very fundamental Christian, woman just has to stay at home and basically be a wife and a mother type of belief that was out there in those days. I think everything's wide open at the moment, more so, but in those days, that's what we were taught.
Proverbs 31 is still sitting there in the Bible. And oh my word, she was a real estate agent. She did not bring shame onto her husband. Her children rose up and called her blessed.
Yeah.
She's not perfect. But I get you. Homeschooling and running companies is probably what kept me sane. Being with my kids and having a big why, they were the greatest thing I've ever done and will always be. But I also knew that there were times when preschool and algebra were not doing it for me, and writing some copy kept me sane. And it made me find that warrior within myself that was later fueled to transform my life.
Yeah.
I will strongly hold, too, that a woman who runs a multi-million-dollar company and wants to raise her kids and be a mother and all that does not necessarily mean she's a feminist. It really doesn't. You actually, and I don't believe you can have it all, but I believe you can have it all in different seasons of your life, and you can have what you want if you will make it what you want.
Yeah.
Some women go off to work because they don't feel inept to be a mom. And I honestly don't believe there's shame in that. I believe that is a cry for mothering in our world, so that women won't feel like the only option for me is to leave my kids and let someone else raise them, because I just feel like I can't. Anybody else? And by the way, I would never have courage to speak into this topic as boldly and as confidently and authentically as I do if it had not been for the years of running my companies, more than 17, and homeschooling all three of my sons, K through 12. They are the reason I'm alive. They are and forever will be the greatest work I've ever done. And because of mothering them, I was able to become a powerful entrepreneur because of the decisions I had to make as a mother and the priorities, the choices I made. I didn't feel like I lost anything when I made a choice to not do certain things in certain seasons. I considered it my honor. It wasn't be a mother is the best thing and run a business is secondary. All of my boys have an entrepreneurial gene and have all been fulfilling that in their own businesses and callings and serving other businesses. Anybody else? What have you run up against, or culturally, or in the faith community, or even your own DNA fighting you? God wired us all with an inner female dog for some reason or another, maybe because we're called to be adaptive and support and help, but there's that inner critic in women. Men don't have this. That you are not enough and you are not doing enough and you will never do enough. And the perfect woman that we all aspire to be does not exist, but you must be her. That thing needs to be slayed. And the more we talk about it. Anybody else?
Well, for me, so my husband is white American and I'm Filipino, so we're a mixed family. So,
Beautiful.
and his background of family came from a broken family, and I came from a traditional family. So the combination of certain tradition and the family that we have to make our own tradition. We have to make it our own, because we take the good things that we learn from our family and keep it. And then the things that we have to unlearn and the things that we dislike, we put it away and learn new things about it. And I think that's what we're trying to do. And I wouldn't be here for my husband. I prayed for him to come to my life, and he empowers me to be who I am. And it's so funny because it's like I always make a joke like, you have no filter. You can just be sarcastic all day and you don't care what to say. And I'm the sensitive one, so I'm like, what do I to say? But then, like, to be him as my partner and as my team partner to life, I'm so honored to be with him, because I feel like I wouldn't be the woman that I am right now if I was not working or teaming up with him. So I'm grateful for that.
It's so good. Anybody else?
Yeah, I would say that
Toby, no. Bethany said, Toby, no. No, but this is the dynamic of Zoom. I love it. I just had to tease you. The amount of money I've made in businesses I've built with a child on my lap or a dog running underneath my chair or a cat on my keyboard. Go ahead, Kirsten.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I really appreciate that, Cielo. I wish that I would have started businesses 26 years ago, like you did, Sandy, while I was homeschooling, and I didn't.
Maybe not.
Yeah, maybe not. I don't know.
That's a certain level of insanity.
That it takes a lot. That's like really impressive, to say the least. But I do think that now doing business with my husband, I'm not in competition with him at all. And in fact, I can combine two things. One of them is when you say that, raising your children was the very best thing that you ever did, and you would never apologize for what you invested into your children. It's literally what drives me. My children are now 31, 28, and 25, and it drives me to create and to be an example for them and to build a legacy for them. It's very, very important to show my daughter that she can do and be anything she wants to be. But also too, when I was homeschooling, I had one set of friends and my husband had another set of friends, just because he was in corporate. And so we just had different directions. Now that we mission and vision together, he still has a job and we still have other things going, but we have a vision together and there's nothing like it. And so I do appreciate that we can not be in competition with each other, but to like give each other space to like grow and bloom. So that's just been my experience. I'm extremely grateful for it.
It's something, because I have to have her on, Allison Armstrong. I've learned so much about men and have had the honor of really attracting an incredible patriarchal man who's just loves how powerful I am, but also loves that I'm a traditional woman. But you said something about competition. It's in a man's DNA. A man does not like to compete with women. And what something is that a lot of times we've had to compete, like in the workplace and different things, for things that necessarily weren't right. But at the end of the day, that's not in a man's nature to want to compete with a woman. I think women tend to be more of, I can have it all and I deserve it all and I'm going to get it all and I don't care if it kills me. And we lay aside, sometimes our values in the process of doing so. Anybody else want to share? Bethany, want to share anybody any more about the whole feminine aspect, being a woman in business or ministry?
I hope the younger generation I feel like they should also have a way to understand that traditional value is important too. Even though we have new ideas, it's fine, but keeping some traditional values that hold to our family values and as well is really important. And I'm going to be 31 in a month, and I feel like I'm still learning so many things when it comes to marriage, family, even about myself. But I don't want to lose the traditional values of being together as a family, working with a husband, putting God as the center of it all. And that's something, as a woman, I think what you preach, what Kristen, Becky, Bethany, learning all this wisdom from being a woman and as a mother, I think all of us in the younger generation have to accept the fact that we should respect that. And from that kind of wisdom.
Well, and Titus 2 teaches that the older women teach the younger women how to love their children, to love their husbands, to take care of the home. It's not that it's the only thing, but it's something, because once you're in your 50s or 60s, you're like, yeah, I probably wouldn't have done that. And that's why I laughed at you. First of all, please do not ever think that I did it perfectly. And my children and I didn't need to work things out together. I mean, my promise to my kids were always, I will pay for your therapy. We're in this together. And so there were many things that I would tell you, Cielo, as a younger mom running your business, that I didn't realize till older, that you don't have to do it all. That you have not left your responsibilities as a mother. If you have a nanny, if you have some help, if you have a cleaning lady, if you give some different duties to someone. And again, I didn't even learn the value of that until I was running a company. And I learned that good to great principle in my company. It also worked in my home. And a lot of women, especially in the church, aren't being mentored that that's okay, because it's almost idolized that mommy should be doing everything. The Proverbs 31 woman was definitely very traditional, very feminine, but man, she was powerful. If I may say, she was a badass. The thing is that we think she did everything perfectly. No, it said she had handmaidens. And now we think we're not a good mom if we have a cleaning lady. Like, who the heck cares at the end? My kids don't remember how clean the toilet was. They don't. Of course they don't. They're boys. But anyway. Bethany, did you have anything to share in that? And
I like that it's so important to really look at yourself and see where your gifts and talents are, and then look at what's holding you back from them, and then move forward that way. And I love that the Titus, where the older women really mentored the younger. I think that's missing a lot. It has been for quite a while.
Very much.
But I really believe that God made man and women different.
Yes.
So that they have skills and abilities that complement.
Yes.
And to be able to work with men and lift them up as they turn around and lift us up. So in business, that becomes a little odd, because you end up being the boss of men sometimes, and understanding that dynamic and being able to really lift up a person is so important.
It's so important. It's such an honor.
Yeah.
I have, on that whole note, as a single woman who is a businesswoman and quite successful, I have an issue where when I meet men, I'm having to feeling like I'm having to downplay my success and being a businesswoman, because a lot of men actually get intimidated by that, and it's like, obviously I'm not meeting the right man, but I think that's really sad that as women, we feel we have to downplay our successes to try and fit into what they, where they, without, they don't want to go into competition with us, but then and it's not about competition, it's just about them respecting us for our success and for our and all that sort of stuff. So, I think as women in business, that's a real issue as well. Not that we want to be in competition with men, but that we're sometimes have this, thing that we downplay ourselves for them for whatever reasons.
And I'm going to encourage all of my listeners, as well as everybody here, to look up Allison Armstrong. Hopefully she hears how many times I mentioned her here, because this whole dynamic is what helped me. Because I began to morph myself. If I dated somebody who might make less money, or I went on a dinner date with somebody who the whole conversation literally was his expectation, that he thought I was intimidating, yet when he met me, realized I wasn't. And that was the expectation from so many women who come with that approach. I'm not trying to intimidate you, and the defensiveness, and knowing when to say no to someone who maybe that's not in their capacity, or also to understand that just because a woman makes more money doesn't mean a man doesn't have enormous capacity to provide for things that she can't or doesn't want to for herself. Money just really is not the deciding factor, but mental capacity is. Which is interesting, because there's a certain mental capacity that it takes to make millions of dollars. It doesn't necessarily, I'm not saying everybody learns it. And then navigating that and understanding that dynamic. If I were to only date men who made more than me, that means I've got about 1% of the world available in my dating pool. Do you get what I'm saying? And yet the person that I'm dating ran several multi-million-dollar companies, ran all different kinds of things, but never ran anything online. So that's a massively different world that, like you said, Bethany, but co-creating together, co-working together, co-learning and inspiring together is a beautiful thing because we were created differently intentionally.
Yeah.
But those very differences cause so much trouble because if I can just say, women, boy, I'm going to be bold here, but that's okay. That's how I am. And I agree with this because this is what I was taught and first heard, and I actually made it my own. Women a lot of times are looking for a hairy female with a penis, and men are looking for a very feminine, man who has a vagina. I'm just going to say that we relate to each other like our own kind, if you will, but we still want to cohabitate together for the beautiful union of making love that God created. Yet we're talking to each other like, well, how come you can't understand me? This is how women process this. And how come you can't understand me? This is how men process this, because we were made dynamically different. And that coming together and learning of each other takes us to a higher place, but it can go against your human instinct. It can go very against your primal nature. And in the workplace, I think it's men and women both thrive when someone is building up and someone has standards and has principles. There are certain things that men have in their fiber that we don't. We are adapting, and we have been created to adapt, and men have a code of honor that I don't mean women aren't honorable, but women will adapt and morph, and then as soon as you turn around, shoot you. Some men will, but that's typically not in the best. A man won't give his energy to that at all. So in closing, what would you say is the biggest thing you have learned in the year of 2020? Clear vision. The prophetic words that were given in the beginning of the year of the voice. Sounds like most of the voices are trying to be silenced with censoring. And the year of clarity, it's 2020. And then it turned into like a sci-fi movie. What have you learned or are you learning?
I've learned this year, being forced to take time off and being in lockdown here in New Zealand. We were in lockdown for only about 6 weeks, I think, but having that forced lockdown and I was at that time in the event industry with my franchise, it forced me to realize that we need rest, even as, entrepreneurs and businesswomen. We need rest. And I realized that I've been burning myself out, and I didn't realize that until lockdown. So now, learning from the lockdown, I do business so differently now, because I'm not hustle, go, got to get this, got to get that. Now I'm doing business out of my flow, out of my natural energies, and things are working, and I didn't realize that you don't have to bust your gut in order to make money. You just have to be your thing and move out of your own flow and out of your own energy, using rest as your strength, and you can achieve so much more. So for me, that was my main takeaway from this year.
A woman's essence is created in rest. And we do operate in our masculine energy more in the workforce, but it's destroying our femininity. We have to take times, even within those shifts, to feed our feminine essence with rest. It's a superpower, quite frankly. Anybody else? What are you learning in the year of 2020?
For me, is the power of focus and choice. I think in this year, either we can choose to fear or to grow or to change something for our lives. And for me this year, I chose to grow. I chose not to fear anymore, because I don't want the government to be responsible of my life. I want to be responsible for my life, not anybody else.
So good. How about you, Bethany? What are you learning in 2020?
Yeah. How important hugs are.
That's it. I mean, how to wear a mask.
Yeah. I think what has shocked me so much is the anger and not having the love that we always, even in our groups of people that we kind of hang out with on a normal basis, I've seen so much strife and division in that. And I think that what it's done for me is just helped me see the love of God even more, and what he does through us even more, because a lot of times it's easy to be in a circle of, I mean, you tend to attract people like who you are, but not exclusively, hopefully. And so it allowed me to really see more of how much God loves us and what he gave for us. Because as I see the hate, or even me in politics, maybe not liking somebody, has made me realize, wow, if I dislike that person that much, can you imagine how much God had to love me to be able to give his life to save us? So, and I don't mean to get preachy, sorry.
No, you're good. Anything's allowed. I was smiling because Becky was shooing somebody out with her eyes. I was loving it. The mama word.
Oh,
absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, just seeing that diversity, and so passionate for the diversity, and the lack of love that we easily lost or shut down during this time was surprising to me, and a real eye-opener for me.
Yeah.
To love.
And I appreciate you opening that, because the Bible, which is the greatest success book I've ever read, says that God so loved the world. He didn't come into the world to condemn it, but he came into the world to love, that whosoever would receive. That even says his nature. God is. This is part of his identity. Love. Yes. And it's a choice, and he gives us the choice. You know, so very good. So thank you so much for opening that. It's very relevant, very important. And I believe in having boundaries, being true to yourself, being bold, but also loving. That doesn't mean everybody's gonna be happy, even if you're loving.
Yeah.
But you can sleep better at night.
Yes. Thank you.
So good. Kirsten, close us up. What did you learn in the year of clarity?
Clarity is for sure revelation, right? Oh my stars, everything has been exposed. For me, I started out the year, the word for me this year was acceleration. And I think that even going back to the things that I had mentioned about realizing the inability for systems to serve us. We have to stop expecting systems to serve us that can't serve us. And so when you're talking about, like, you know, independent living or assisted living and those pieces, or you're talking about a public school system and those pieces. And so for me, it was like, wow, okay, so whatever was stirring inside of me really rose up. And now there's an acceleration on the feeling of, okay, I need to rise up to who I'm supposed to be so that I can be a part of the answer for these things, because they are very, very, I don't want to just use the word broken, because that's almost too one-dimensional. But there are some serious pieces that we saw as a nation when it came to our old people weren't dying of COVID. Yes, they did. However, they began to die from failure to thrive.
Yes.
Because in order to serve the government's, what I would call oppressive mandates on the elderly people, they lost human touch. And they lost the ability to be literally loved and have stimulus. And when you have dementia, that doesn't work. So that's only one example of many systems that went just like kaboom. And so this is an opportunity. It is the greatest opportunity we will probably see in a very, very, very long time, where we get to decide what systems need to be recreated. Some systems are going to have to fail so that they can get recreated. What part are we going to play? What systems are the most important to us? So for me, it's just been like huge. I'm very aware of the moment that we're living in, that I will look back on and tell my grandchildren about, that we lived in this moment, because everything is going to shift. It's already shifting.
Yes.
And over the next 5 years, we're just going to be like, what happened?
Yes.
And not in necessarily a bad way.
No.
Just an awakening.
Yes. It's so good. One of the things I patterned myself by, and I don't know the scripture reference, but I know the verse is to prove all things and hold fast to that which is good. And I think one of the things that we've seen, one of the things that I would hope and pray came out of this pandemic is that mommies and daddies would decide how they want to raise their children.
Amen.
Mommies and daddies would make the decision for their family.
Yes.
Company owners would be making decisions for their companies. People would be making decisions for keeping their employees safe. If anything has come out of this, I would hope and pray that we realized that just because it's the way we've always done things doesn't mean it's the way that we should do things.
No.
So good. All right, ladies, I'm so honored that you've been with me today. I hope and I know that you've inspired a lot of people. And it's my honor to lead you not only in the VIP, but the VIP Inner Circle and also our Inner Circle community, where we have thousands of entrepreneurs from every walk of life, every background, every income level, everything you can think of. They're not only welcome, but we all work together in that diversity and harmony, creating a level of unity together that is, I got to create for my own little world. That was my vision for a real change, that unity and that harmony would flow together. And I just love the diversity that we have. So I hope that this conversation has given people courage to do that, not only in their companies, but in their homes. And so thanks again for listening to this podcast. Remember, you can find me wherever you can write my name in. If you're going to find me on Instagram, it's Sandi Krakowski. If you're going to find me on Facebook, it's Sandi Krakowski Biz. And I encourage you to find the platform that's most comfortable for you and become a part of the conversation. Until next time, don't forget, you can make a real change wherever you go. Just make that choice.